Welcome back to the Legacy Warriors podcast, where we break down the top two feeder leagues to the UFC. Obviously, today we got Cage Warriors 186 going down as I'm recording this podcast. But tomorrow, after UFC London, we got LFA 204 going down in Connecticut at the Foxwoods Resort and Casino, I believe it's called. And it's headlined by a heavyweight title fight between former Contender Series competitor Hugo Cunha, looking to defend his title once again as he takes on a very tough and underrated Denzel Freeman. Very fun fight there. As total right now, I believe there's 8 pro fights scheduled for the card. Just before recording this or hitting record, I found out that the Levon Khabalayev and Alex Fisher fight is off. So as of right now, there are 8 pro fights scheduled for this Connecticut card. So I'm here to break it down for you guys, give you guys as much information as I can on all of these competitors and how you should be looking to bet these guys or these fights moving forward. And a reminder, I do have my tracked plays for all of these events on the MMA LOTN Patreon page. You can find that link in the description below. I got 4 plays for this card. Let's see if you can decipher it through my predictions. Or just check out the Patreon page and you can find the good stuff there. All right, let's get right into it. First fight up between Kevin Carrier coming in at minus 300 as he goes up against Kyle Pufahl, who comes in at plus 240. Now, this is a matchup that was originally scheduled to take place just about a month ago, but on fight day, Pufahl fell ill, and that fight was obviously postponed to this card. Same neck of the woods for both guys. I believe the original fight was supposed to take place in Niagara Falls. Both of these guys are northeastern guys, so still in their region. I was actually at Carrier's last fight in October, and it was clear that he had a huge contingent of fans and supporters there, so it makes sense why they want to put him on display in this spot. He was eating some big shots, but he still managed to bounce back. He's a solid regional fighter, good submission game as well. Has some decent striking, although I'd like to see him clean up his defensive striking a little bit. He's going up against Kevin Pufahl, who's riding a 4-fight winning streak. He's competed for a few different northeastern promotions as well. His level of competition not been all that great, so there's a little bit of a concern there going up against one of the tougher guys in the region here. And I think the 2 guys that he lost to on the regional scene were just a lot more physical and tough to deal with, but he doesn't look like, a bad fighter by any means. I still got to lean with Carrier here, as I think that, interestingly enough, when they were first scheduled to throw down, Carrier was close to minus 750, now finds himself closer to minus 300. So I'm not sure if there's something going on behind the scenes there, but I still feel like Carrier can put together a better body of work. I think eventually he'll be able to get the fight to the ground, and then I think from there we'll see his BJJ really shine and eventually find that submission win. But I do like Carrier here, and minus 300, again, a smidgen wide for this level of fight for my liking, but I think Carrier gets it done. All right, next up, we got Quinton Pasley coming in at minus 1,200, going up against Gracie, who comes in at plus 750. Now, Pasley has a clean 7-0 amateur record and turned pro back in October 2023, quickly putting his opponent away in 59 seconds. But that opponent was 0-5 and looked like he had no business being in the cage that night, and I have no idea how that fight was sanctioned to begin with. Pasley quickly ran through him as soon as he landed a big shot, but on the amateur scene, faced some decent competition and obviously put together that undefeated record. He's very fast, explosive, has a ton of knockout power, and has a great takedown defense from everything I've been seeing thus far. Very athletic, very gifted, and highly touted amongst the people that know what's good in that region. He's going up against Gracie, who, I'm trying to figure out why he's deciding to come into MMA at 35 years old and never had an MMA fight in his career. Obviously, being a Gracie, you would expect him to have high-level BJJ. The only tape I could find on him was a gi match from 2010. So I don't really understand, his fascination with turning pro here at 35 years old. There's no way he makes it to the UFC at this stage. But yeah, he's a brother of Henry Gracie and all those other siblings that he has. He's a grandson of Helio Gracie, the godfather of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But yeah, this seems like a spot that Pasley should go out there and just absolutely squash Gracie. Again, I don't know much about Gracie. Maybe he comes in and there's this super athlete that we know nothing about. But from what I saw from his lone gi match that I was able to uncover, nothing special. What you would expect from a BJJ black belt. But even with that, it's tough to justify paying minus 1,200 on any mixed martial arts matchup, but I'm still going to take Pasley to win this fight, and I'm assuming his athleticism advantage will allow him to win this fight pretty early. All right, next up, we got Kelvin Sterling coming in at plus 190, going up against Rodrigo Brauna, who comes in at minus 240. Now, Sterling is the, I believe, older brother of Aljamain Sterling. He's 35 years old, but seems like this is more of a hobby more than anything. He went 7-4 as an amateur from 2018 to 2021, and is now 0-1 as a pro. His first pro MMA fight actually was stopped due to an accidental eye poke, so that was a no contest. But the last fight that we saw him in was in August of 2022, and he's been on the sidelines ever since. He got shut down by a superior striker, a guy that could shut down the grappling and wrestling of Sterling, and able to outdamage him over the course of 15 minutes. He was scheduled to fight again in September 2023, but that fight fell through. And again, nothing special about him other than the fact that he is the brother of former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling. Another thing to note, all 12 of his fights from pro to amateur have hit the scorecards. So either he's very durable or he also really sucks at finishing opponents as well. His opponent, Rodrigo Brauna, originally from Brazil, looks like he set up shop in New York about 5 years ago, training with some stellar grapplers, including Mantello, who's obviously a high-level Fury FC product now. He went 3-2 as a pro, ending his 3-2 as an amateur, ended his amateur career in August 2023 on a 2-fight losing streak. Seems to have decent wrestling, decent grappling, some good jiu-jitsu as well. I am going to pick him to win this fight, but the inactivity of both these guys gives me a lot of pause. You don't know what kind of improvements or decline that we might be seeing from these guys after being away from the cage as long as they have. But I feel like Brauna might be closer to being a little bit more of a prime version of himself than what Sterling has brought to the table. But still, pass all around. All right, next up, Antoine Ho coming in at minus 1,500, going up against Jimmy Natividad, who comes in at plus 850. Now, Ho came up short on the Contender Series this past season. It was the first fight of the season, and it was probably the most highly touted fight of the entire season, considering he was going up against Lonnie Kavanaugh. Anton Ho was doing his damn thing on the LFA scene, putting together an undefeated record and looking damn good doing so. And Kavanaugh was doing his thing on the Cage Warriors scene across the pond, looking damn good doing so. And we saw Kavanaugh was able to notch the knockout victory just about 2.5 minutes into that first round. Somewhat competitive up until that point. We saw Ho try to utilize his speed and his jab to touch up Kavanaugh, while Kavanaugh was kind of just lining up the big shots and trying to counter the entries of Ho. And it ultimately led to him landing that nasty left hook that put Ho away. Ho still has a ton of potential. Obviously very nasty kicking game, good like Taekwondo karate style of striking. Unorthodox movement, sometimes likes to be flashy at times. His defensive grappling has tremendously improved so that he can either, just fend off takedowns and out damage his opponents like he did against Miguel Sanson, or he just keeps fights upright and just batters his opponents on the feet. He's going up against Jimmy Natividad, who's making his LFA debut this weekend, but he's no stranger to Fight Pass promotions. He's competed for CFFC and APFC recently, and he's gone 1-2 under those promotions. That lone victory came in a 90-second knockout, and I think that's him at his best. He throws tight, crisp, and powerful boxing combinations, often looking to decapitate his opponents inside the pocket. But outside of that, he can be picked apart by better strikers. He can be out-grappled by better grapplers. And I think there's a reason the LFA is bringing him into this spot to try to get Ho back onto his the winning track. But with that said, again, like I said, from minus 1,200, not parlayable, no matter the discrepancy in skill. Minus 1,500 here is also very, very risky, I would say. I think Ho wins. I think he's the better fighter. I think his speed, footwork, and range management will ultimately be the difference maker here. But if Natividad is able to land a big shot, it could cause Ho some problems, right? That loss that Ho suffered was the first of his MMA career period. You're talking about a guy that went 7-0 as an amateur and then 6-0 as a pro leading up to that loss to Kavanaugh. So to get put out as badly as he did against Kavanaugh, you got to wonder where his mind state is at trying to bounce back from that loss. Whether he's going to be motivated enough, whether he has the confidence in his chin, whether he's going to be, gun shy. You don't know these things after a guy suffers that brutal first knockout the way that Ho did. So to trust him at minus 1,500, I think is irresponsible. I wouldn't be mad at anybody looking to take a little bit of a shot on Natividad at plus 850, but even with that in mind, I'm just going to stay away from this matchup altogether. I'll take Ho to win this fight, but be very careful parlaying minus 1,500 in a sport as volatile as mixed martial arts. All right, next up, we got Justin Sumter coming in at minus 120 going up against Luis Enrique Barbosa, who comes in at minus 110. Now, Sumter is riding a 3-fight winning streak, choking out all 3 of those opponents in the first round. Some notable names on his record, obviously, were Eric Pasley and Sean Burrell, former UFC fighters who he was able to take to the ground immediately and strangle within 90 seconds. He's strong, he's powerful, loves to suplex his opponents when he's able to get that body lock from the back position. And he is also a guy that's been on the Contender Series twice, but fell short both times. In 2018, he got finished by Ian Heinisch after having some early success. And the same thing happened in 2019, where he ended up losing to Maki Patolo. Back in April of 2022, he took on Billy Ray Goff for the CES promotion, and he nearly had Goff out of there at the ending of the first round, where he was able to establish a dominant position on the back of Goff, raining down big shots, but unable to get the finish. And then it seemed like he ran out of steam at that point, and Goff was able to get the finish in the following round. A lot of Sumter's fights have finished in the first round, and that's where he seems to be most strongest. But as fights start to go into deeper waters, that's where things start to get a little bit sketchy for him. He's very strong, physical, like I said, very good with his grappling, has a nasty neck crank / rear naked choke game, especially when he's able to establish that position. But this is also a guy used to fight at 185 pounds, now coming into this 205-pound division, might be at a little bit of a size disadvantage against Barbosa. Now, metrically speaking, I think he is taller and longer, but you're talking about a guy in Barbosa who used to compete at heavyweight, weighed as much as I think 256 pounds at one point, tried cutting down to light heavyweight for his last UFC matchup, ended up coming up short. He went 2-4 with the UFC from 2015 to 2018. His last matchup, he lost to Ryan Spann by decision. Since then, he is 6-4 and fought some pretty decent competition on the regional scene. He even fought Phil DeFries for the KSW Heavyweight Championship, fought Kirill Kornilov, who was 12-0-1 at the time in a Russian promotion, and then lost to Slim Trebelsi in his last matchup when Slim was still 3-0. And we know Slim, obviously one of the higher level prospects in the PFL as a heavyweight. Again, Barbosa going back down to light heavyweight now at 31 years old, looks in spectacular shape. When he's at his best, he can look to grind opponents out with his physicality and his size. His striking's not all that bad, but I think he is most comfortable when he can get fights into the clinch range and the grappling range, and I think that's where he's going to be looking to take Sumter. I think he can be competitive physically in the clinch and in the grappling with Sumter early, which will keep Sumter away from getting a dominant position, and then I think we see Barbosa really start to wear on Sumter and eventually finish him in the second or third round. This is a close fight. Hence why the odds are pretty much a pick-em here. If Sumter can get some success going within the first 2 or 3 minutes by getting Barbosa's back and getting a dominant position, sure, he might be able to wrap something up here. But I think Barbosa is experienced enough, and I think he is durable enough to really survive a lot of what Sumter's throwing at him. Mix in the fact that Barbosa has not been finished in nearly 8 years. So I'm going to go Barbosa here, and I think he gets a finish either in the second or third round. All right, next up, we got Joe Giannetti coming in at minus 205, going up against Leonardo Limberger, who comes in at plus 165. Now, Giannetti, a lot of people would remember him for tough 27 back in 2018, where he made it to the finals, but then he ended up losing to Michael Trezano by split decision in the finale, and then the UFC decided to throw him back to the regional scene. Since then, he's gone 10-5-1, most recently coming up short against Peter Barrett in a championship matchup by split decision. That was a fight where it seemed like Giannetti had some solid success through about 2.5 rounds with his grappling and wearing Barrett down, and then Barrett seemed to really muster up some momentum, and it seemed like Giannetti was starting to fade, allowing Barrett to start pulling away later on in this fight and ultimately getting that split decision win. He was able to choke out 2 fighters before that, very mediocre fighters as well. Seeing him quickly get dismantled by Michael Dufort in 90 seconds was not a good look either. I believe he's a BJJ black belt. Even took a karate combat fight back in October where he was able to knock out former UFC fighter Brandon Jenkins in 49 seconds. Long, rangy, but might be a fringe UFC guy. If he does make it to the UFC, I see his career going maybe 4, maybe 5 fights where he ends up having a losing record and getting cut. But he doesn't have to worry about that because he's fighting a different fighter here, Leonardo Limberger, who's 3-8 since COVID, but also 1-7 in his last 8 fights. I think he's better than his record indicates. He did something that's usually not the most beneficial for Brazilian fighters, and that's going over there continuously to Russia and fight in the ACA promotion. He was able to win 2 of those fights, but for the most part, he was getting handled by heavy wrestlers. He put up decent fights in a lot of those matchups as well, put up some solid resistance. He has some good Muay Thai, has a BJJ black belt, and he's a guy that I think actually could give Giannetti some problems. Don't let the run that Limberger's on confuse you with his skill level, right? I still think he's a solid fighter, a guy that could actually have some success in LFA. Giannetti has not been fighting the type of guys that Limberger's been fighting. So there's a reason that, Giannetti's recent fights have looked much better for him than that 1-7 run that Limberger is currently on. I'm going to go Limberger. I think as this big of an underdog, I think his Muay Thai could really take command of this fight. And if it ends up getting into the grappling realm, I think he could actually find a submission against Giannetti after putting him into some compromising positions. So, I'm going to go Limberger. I thought the -200 line that we were able to get yesterday was a blessing. I think that now we're seeing some action come in on Limberger, which is why he's at that +165 line. I think he wins this fight, and I think he strangles Giannetti within 2 rounds. All right, co-main event time here where we got Ednilson Santos coming in at -240 going up against Dylan Mantello, who comes in at +190. Now, Santos last time around made his LFA debut after a 2-year hiatus from mixed martial arts, and he was able to defeat former UFC fighter Camuela Kirk. He had a solid first round where he beat him to the punch and really dictated the pace with his striking. In the second round, he got a little bit out grappled. And then in the third round, showcased some solid urgency, worked out of some bad positions, and really put the pressure on Kirk to start running away with that matchup. He's been training out of Cruz MMA alongside Plinio Cruz and Alex Pereira. And it seems like he's very much bought into their style over there in Connecticut and has been living there for a couple years now. BJJ black belt, heavy Muay Thai as well. I love his ability to just dictate the pace and just march forward and throw combinations. He's going up against a guy in Dylan Mantello who I feel is being kind of shoved down our throats a little bit, right? There are these guys that come around every so often, the Dennis Bazookias, the Phil Hawes, guys that kind of struggle to make it to the UFC, but these top regional promotions still want to give them a platform to try to make it to the next level. And, I'm not trying to stop them at all, but I just don't think that they will make it to that level. And even if they do, they might have a pretty quick career with the big promotion and eventually get cut anyway. Mantello, when he is at his most comfortable and his best, he establishes his range from distance, utilizing long, lanky striking, distance weapons, straight shots down the pipe, good kicking, decent range management. But there are issues with his striking defense, which is often why you see him getting hit by these big punchers and get put away. He can also be out-grappled. In his last matchup, it was his second opportunity on the Contender Series, and he came up short against Ahmad Hassanzada. Hassanzada had tremendous success in the first round, but seemed to be gassing out in the second round where Mantello nearly put Hassanzada away. And then in the third round, Hassanzada snatched the momentum, was able to survive that early third round onslaught from Mantello, turn the tables, get the takedown, get the back, and put Mantello to sleep. And I think Mantello kind of chokes in those spots where he's not able to dictate the pace, which is why I think we saw the first round go the way that it did. Luckily, his durability paid off for him, so he can show some skills in the second round. But then once we saw he was unable to get the finish, Hassan Zada was able to get the momentum back, and he was able to get the finish himself. Trains out of this Serra-Longo camp. Even though a fight that he actually won, he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. That one fight that he won against Nate Williams, he was getting pieced up in that first round until he landed a flying knee in the second round and eventually got the finish there. So he can be dangerous. But I think in this fight against Ednilson Santos, I think he's going to struggle. I think Santos is going to dictate the pace from jump. I think Santos has good enough durability to walk down Mantello, eat a few shots, but let go with his combinations and really start to take the momentum from him. And I wouldn't even be surprised if Santos looks to get this fight to the ground to put Mantello in bad positions and eventually find the finish there. Santos was minus 200 just yesterday. Now he's up at minus 240. It seems like the public agrees with me that he should go out there and do his damn thing. And I actually think he wins this fight pretty emphatically and maybe even gets a call to the Contender Series this season, considering the run that he's on right now. So give me Ednilson Santos, and I think he gets the finish within 2.5 rounds. All right, main event time. We got the heavyweight LFA title on the line here as Hugo Cunha comes in at plus 160 going up against Denzel Freeman, who comes in at minus 200. Now, starting off on the Cunha side of things here, he came up short on the Contender Series this past season by coming up short against Rizvan Kunyev. Kunyev was looking to try to get that fight to the ground so he can establish his BJJ black belt, but his wrestling, not all that great. He struggled to get Kunyev to the ground, and once Kunyev was able to reverse the position, he was able to muster up a barrage of shots, starting off with a nasty knee to eventually get Cunha out of there at the ending of the first round. Cunha's striking leaves a lot to be desired. His wrestling obviously needs some work so that he can get fights into the grappling room sooner than later so he can establish his game. He has some solid BJJ once fights actually hit the ground. He's pulled off some solid reversals, some good submissions, managed to get back to his feet, but on the striking side of things, he leaves a lot to be desired there. He's going up against Denzel Freeman, who is a guy that I wish was a little bit more active in mixed martial arts because he probably would already be in the UFC. He has a bit of a taekwondo striking style where you see him throwing up kicks with just crazy agility for a guy his size, but then it's really his wrestling that starts to set him apart from the rest of his opponents. Last time around, we saw him pretty much run through Steven Aspland, taking him down numerous times and eventually finding that rear naked choke in the second round. He's been training heavily in his wrestling game over the last couple of years, and I think that's what's been eating up a lot of his time as of late. Even a few years ago, he was actually trying out for the WWE, trying to showcase his athleticism and skill set there, but it's clear that he is more of a wrestler and a mixed martial artist more than anything. He's 33 years old, I believe. He's been jumping around in terms of training camps. The last coach that I saw coaching him in his last LFA fight was actually the pound-for-pound Muay Thai coach from Colorado that often corners Miranda Maverick. I apologize, I forgot what his name was, but very recognizable cornerman there. But again, it's really his wrestling and then his speed with his striking that makes him so dangerous. So look for Freeman to actually utilize his wrestling defensively here, and I think he'll be able to shut down that game from Cunha. And I hope that Freeman doesn't decide to lean on his wrestling here offensively, because I think that's where Cunha can get the better of him. Cunha will likely be able to pull off a reversal, get some dominant positions, and keep Freeman on his back. But I think on the striking realm, with the speed and the power of Freeman, that's where Cunha will really struggle. So look for Freeman to land those big shots, get Cunha out of there within a round and a half, and I think we get a new heavyweight champion here in Denzel Freeman, and hopefully a call up to the UFC, which is where I think he really deserves to be, but at bare minimum, a shot on the Contender Series this next season. And new LFA heavyweight champion Denzel Freeman. All right. There you guys go. Full card breakdown for LFA 204. Again, only 8 fights as of right now. I have my track plays already posted on the Patreon page, so make sure you guys check that out if you're interested in that. I got the UFC London prop dropping in the next few hours, so stay tuned for that. And then obviously track plays for UFC London as well on the Patreon page. All right, that's a wrap on pretty much I guess the prop drop is coming later today, but I'll see you guys later for that. Peace.